The Digital Photography Cafe show is brought to you by Focus Pyramid, the autofocus lens calibration tool for your camera, and by ShootProof, the easy way to proof and sell your photos online.
Welcome to the Digital Photography Cafe show. Join hosts Trevor Curran and Joseph Christina as they chat about the art and business of photography.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This is episode 161. I'm Joseph Christina. On last week's episode, we talked about a new fashion-inspired Adobe Lightroom preset series and looked at making tack-sharp images using the Focus Pyramid autofocus lens calibration tool. If you haven't watched last week's show, I encourage you to do so. You can find it at digitalphotographycafe.com and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/DPhotoCafe. Listen with the popular Stitcher, TuneIn, and Xbox music apps, or subscribe in iTunes or RSS. So, all right, guys, we are here. I am flying solo. You do not see Trevor next to me. He's just extremely busy this week. He's like the three-legged cat in a sandbox, and he's just going nuts, just trying to get through it. He's got a lot of websites that are due, and he needs to get them done. So he's sent a little note to say hello to everybody, but that's as far as it's going to go this week. I'm going to kind of hold down the show for. So anyways, we're going to jump right into it. There's some cool stuff going on, and one of the important ones that is going to be for all of us, I would imagine, is the new Lightroom 5.6 just came out. So if you already are a Lightroom user, the new 6 is 510 megs. Not too bad for a download, not too bad, not too large. Be sure that you have your serial number ready. For me, I didn't need it, but sometimes you do. It just depends on from what version you're coming to the new one through. If you're behind a couple of versions, I'm not sure what the criteria is, but make sure you have your serial number ready so you're not just sitting there and you can't do anything. But there's a lot of new things that has happened. But before looking at the new update, what it has involved in it, let's go ahead and do a quick install. So, all right, guys, you download your software really quick. It's about 500 megs. Double click on the package itself. It's going to say, hey, there we go. Going to hit continue. It says, wait, hold on just a second. We have some important information for you. That's, of course, your software licensing agreement. Go ahead and agree to that as we have to. And then it'll ask you, do you want to stick it into a different location? Leave that all the same. You'll see it's 1.23 gigabytes once it's installed, even though you downloaded only 500 megs, but once it's decompressed, it is pretty large. So type in your admin password, and it'll go ahead and start installing. I'm going to go ahead and cut this so you don't have to see it, but it ended up taking about anywhere maybe about 5 minutes or so for the actual full installation. So let's go ahead and fast forward that just a little bit. There we go. The installation was successful. Congratulations. Excellent. So we're going to go ahead and open that up real quick here. And at the top, we'll click on the About Lightroom so we can make sure that it's working properly. Now, what did happen right there is you'll see there was like that odd pause, is that it crashed and I had to reopen it. Not good. Anyway, so here we go. Lightroom 5.6, camera raw, latest and greatest, fantastic. So I'm going to jump into my library here, and this is where we end up with another problem. It does not load the images. It just sits and sits and sits. Now, I'm reloading the software again because that time failed. And I was there for probably about 2-3 minutes. I was thinking that it was building or something. So here we go. There's our image. Everything is working. It's taking a while to load. It's kind of sluggish the first time you open it. It's just the way it is. And that is it. Just go right back. I'm going to go ahead and close this up. There's a ballerina shot that we just did last week. Let me go ahead and close that. All right. So yeah, you could tell that it's, I don't know. For me, the two crashes where they basically core dumped, that doesn't forebode well. I don't know what's going on. That's not been the case. But we did have those two dumps. One, and the install itself, once it was finished, it kind of just got hung up. And then finally, once we did get in, as you saw, it just did not want to load the images off our external drive. So I don't know what was up with that, but we did close it. We ended up having to force quit, actually close them, terminate the package itself completely, and then reload. And once we did, everything was fine. So far, so good. Like we saw on there, it was sluggish loading up, but that happens like every time. That's just the way Adobe is. I think it does some back-end stuff and whatever it does, but once it works itself out, it's all good. So as far as the bug fixes, now, it was just minor, I would say. The main thing is just a ton of new lens profiles. They got about 20 new lens profiles in there. They added like 2 or 3 new cameras, as they always do whenever they do a new release, a new update. The main fixes are kind of important, and they have to do with, number one, the new Nikon, the D810, and the other thing was synchronization. The whole cloud sync thing with mobile, blah, blah, blah. So the sync problem was basically this. Let's say you have your pad in front of you and you're going through your images, and you're like, well, I want this one, I'm star rate this one, another star on this. For some reason, these stars and whatnot, it just didn't sync. It wouldn't sync well. So I don't know supposedly they fixed that, which is really important, but that's the whole reason why you want to use Lightroom on your pad, really, is for the selection process, to be able to take your iPad in the studio, go sit on the couch with your client and say, okay, so here's your 50 images. Let's go ahead and star rate them and find exactly the one that we want to use for let's say your commercial, your ad, your headshot, or whatever it is. So that was an issue, and I'm glad that they addressed that. Also, what it would do is in this synchronization process, it'll come up and it'll say syncing images, and it would just sit there and sit there and sit there some more, and it'll just keep on saying syncing images, and it'll never sync. You end up having to close the program, come back in, and that was supposedly also resolved. On the side of the Nikon, the D810 is where they really put their emphasis. And number one, and there were major problems. Number one, SRAW files, they weren't opening, which was a major problem. Also, the color space, the color profile that they had set up for the Nikon D810 was also off. So they fixed that. So those were like the main changes that happened. It's definitely worth downloading because those are the ones that they say have been made. There's always little patches and little fixes that are going on behind the scenes that will help us out. So it could be something that has to do with speed, or it could have something to do with just not crashing, because we know that there was a lot of crashes going on with the folks that were using Lightroom in Windows, where they were just randomly crashing. And Adobe understood that. So from 5.5 to 5.6 now, they supposedly fixed that also. So we didn't have the problem as much on OS X and the Mac, but still Windows users, you guys did have that problem. So supposedly that was kind of worked out. Anyways, moving on. Apple. I've been ragging on Apple as of late because Samsung has just been hitting it out of the park when it comes to their ad campaigns. They're just doing it and doing it right. Whereas Apple, I know Apple from way back when they first started, their ads were always stellar. Their marketing, stellar. The people that do their ads, stellar. It's just amazing. Always tight, really good ad campaigns. And they've just been like mediocre as of late. Well, Apple finally hit it. They're firing on all cylinders, it seems. Again, this ad campaign, or this ad spot, is called Dreams. And it is right now, you can see it probably in your local market, if you just, or possibly even on cable. Take a look at it. You'll see it. If not, you can look at it online. I'll try to play a piece of it here while I'm talking about it. But it starts out with a couple of guys. I don't know if they're weathermen or they're just a couple of guys on the beach, and they have this anemometer, and the thing's spinning like crazy. And you can look at the iPhone. It's telling them exactly the speed of the wind. Really cool. Then it pans over, and it's got like another shot of this woman, and she's doing a pulse on this child. Real cool, right? Then it moves on from there. It has like this jeweler, and he's setting, or she's setting, a diamond into the ring, but she's using, or he's using, the phone as a magnifying glass. Basically, she's looking at the phone, and strapped onto the phone is one of those external macro lenses. Really cool shot. Then it moves on to an artist, and he's using the phone, or she's using the phone to project a huge image onto the side of a wall, on the side of a building to paint. So it's all about like the day in the life of like this iPhone 5S and what you can do, or what people do with it daily. It's really cool. They did a good job. The background music is perfect for the spot. Really, really done well. Kudos to Apple. They're finally back in the game. So anyways, before we go any further, guys, let's go ahead and take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors.
Are you frustrated with slightly out of focus images when you know your autofocus spot was dead on? It's simply not your fault. From manufacturer to manufacturer, and even lens copy to lens copy, there are slight variances to the exact spot where light is being focused onto the sensor. Finally, there's a product that allows you to compensate for those variances and make sharper images immediately. Focus Pyramid, the autofocus lens calibration tool, is an absolute must for every photographer. If you want to make the sharpest images possible, then you need to take control over your camera's focusing system. With the Focus Pyramid, you can calibrate all of your lenses on your lunch break. The Focus Pyramid makes lens calibration quick and easy at an affordable price. So give your lenses a new lease on life and take your photography to the next level. Head over to focuspyramid.com/DPC and get an additional 10% off just for being a show listener.
So, all right, guys, we are back. So I was reading this article, and it's kind of interesting, and this has happened to me in the past, and it's probably even happened to you guys. So this woman was going on vacation, took the 3 batteries that she had for her Canon 5D Mark III, took them on vacation, figured that she'd have plenty of battery time, battery life, and lo and behold, she didn't. Why? Because she did a firmware update before leaving. So everyone's like, well, how does that pertain? What does that matter? So what happens a lot of times is Canon, they do little things behind the scenes that every time they do an update, it sometimes affects third-party things, third-party strap-ons. This time it's the battery. So what happened was she had one actual Canon, one of those LPE6s, standard battery for the Canon 5D Mark III, and then I think it was a couple of off name, like third party manufacturer batteries. Well, when she put in one of those third parties, it comes up with a message. What does it say? Communication with Canon LPE6 battery is irregular. Really? It's irregular? So then it says underneath, it says continue to use battery, cancel, which is the highlighted one. That's what it wants you to do. Cancel /OK. And you get to pick. Either keep using the battery or hit cancel and don't use the battery. Well, in a panic, she's like, well, what am I going to do? If I hit OK, what is it going to do? Is it going to damage the camera? What's going to happen? I'm just going to hit cancel. Well, as soon as she hit cancel, what happened? Now the camera says, hey, that battery, we don't want it in here. It's obviously not approved. We shouldn't use it. Now it no longer works at all in that camera. Period. The camera goes dead. It goes off. Can't use that battery any longer. Big problem, right? So this is one of those things that you really need to kind of look out for. The thing that, I asked the question and I'm like, well, so if batteries are today, not really today, this has been going on for quite some time, but let's say they're looking at batteries now and saying, hey, we don't want anything besides OEM batteries in our camera for whatever reason, basically to make money. The batteries are 3 times the amount of what you'd buy a third-party battery for. So let's say, well, who's to say they don't do that now for flashlight or possibly even for lenses and say, listen, sorry, now Tamron, you guys are out. We don't want Tamron on there, or we don't want any of these. But I don't know. Obviously, I don't think that will happen. But it's just one of those questions I ask myself, that if they're so adamant about having, let's say, a specific battery not being in there, what's to say that they're not adamant about something else in the future? So this has been going on for years. Like I said, this is not new. It was probably new for her, but I've seen this happen since the very beginning. Canon just does that. And I would imagine as a Canon shooter, I see it. Maybe Nikon does the same thing. But the things to note here is never do a firmware update prior to a mission critical event. or if you're leaving the studio and you're going on vacation, or you're going to some gala event, or you're doing some portrait shoot or whatever, don't update your firmware unless you know that you're going to have a couple of days that you could possibly be down from doing this update. Because remember, the firmware is your brain of your camera, right? It's the brains. If for some reason that firmware doesn't work out right, or your installation craps out while you're doing it and crashes, and now all of a sudden your camera is rendered useless, you're stuck using a backup body. You don't want to do that. Be careful. You don't want to do this kind of thing when something is coming up. Leave your firmware alone. Should you update your firmware? Absolutely, because things that are wrong with the camera are usually fixed in the firmware updates. They do not do firmware updates unless it's a serious problem that they're correcting. They usually do not just make little iterations to it. They're usually a big problem, and then they push out an update, unless it's a yearly or whatnot. So simply make it a ritual that before you leave the studio, or before you're going to, let's say, here she was go on vacation, or possibly go to an event or shoot something large, test your equipment. Make it a ritual. Just simply test it. Plug everything in, test it out, fire some shots, make sure everything is functioning. Because if not, you're going to end up with some serious problems later when things are not working as she did. Anyways, moving on. I was kind of looking at this, and for the last week or two, I kept on getting like this kind of email or messaging with this question, and it probably has to do with that a lot of this has been going around on the net, or maybe there was something big that was going on. But the question was basically about compositing, and doing compositing as a photographer. Are you still a photographer? Are you still a photographer or not? Is it cheating or not? I guess in short, I would say probably yes and yes again. But the thing of it is this is just the nature of the beast. This is what we do. I think that as photographers, if you're taking photographs and it's all of your source material, right? And you're then compositing it together. Okay, well, of course, you're the photographer. Now, on the other hand, if you're going ahead and downloading or buying source material, photography, and then putting it all together, meshing it together into something, then I would say, well, you're an artist, right? You're a digital artist. Today, it's kind of a fine line. What is really a photograph? What is really art? What really happened? What is something's perceived notion of what happened? And that's really it. So for me, unless you're like a photographer for Reuters and you're a photojournalist where every single pixel has to remain as found, as taken, so that, quote unquote, that image is authentic, and it could be labeled as news or as documentation or as historical, then I would say just don't worry about it. Because I tell you what, even in the film days, there was a lot of work in post doing inside that darkroom, smelling those chemicals. I mean, we were pushing stuff from one end to the other end. We were doing compositing, but on the film side, we were doing crops that altered the meaning of a picture just with that crop. And they were doing that for years and years and years. Even in Reuters, they took a wide angle shot of a scene of this quote unquote crowd of people that are killing each other, or they have bats and everything. And if you saw the original shot, it's only like about 10 or 15 of them. But then when you cropped in really close, now it looks like the entire frame of all these people that are beating each other up with bats. Now all of a sudden, the meaning and the message behind that photograph has changed. So this has been happening since the very beginnings of photography. So I really, I wouldn't worry about it so much. But the thing is with the advent of digital photography and digital Lightrooms, this whole thing has kind of changed, because now everyone has the ability to modify images. It's not one of these things that, only the pros are able to do that, or only the people that can afford the $1,000 package can do that. Now it's pretty readily available. There is really nice editing that can be done using an iPad. which is crazy. That means lay folk are able to go ahead and just remove people out of a picture with a couple of strokes, which is crazy. So I wouldn't worry about all these, the people that are the folks that say, oh, well, you're not a photographer unless the image is authentic and real, and don't do any kind of photo manipulation. Manipulation is the devil. I wouldn't play into all that. The bottom line is it's all about what you see and what you are trying to create with that photograph. And remember, what you're trying to create with that photograph might not be something artsy. Maybe it's exactly what you saw, and you're not able to capture it with the current technology. I'll pose this to you guys. Here's a perfect example. The moon. How many people have looked up in the moon and they're like, wow, that is a huge moon. Look at all the spots and all the coloring, and just look how big it is in comparison to the skyline. So what do? You're like, that's an amazing shot. You get out your camera, you take a picture, and then you go and you take a look at it later and you're like, what the? That's not what I saw. I saw this huge moon. It was like yellowish in tint, and it was just so big in comparison to the skyline. And now it's the size of the tip of a pencil eraser. What is this? The bottom line is what we see is really not what the camera captures. And to actually capture that scene, it would have to be done in compositing. You would have to take the moon telephotoly, right, with a long lens to get the same size. And then you'd have to take a wide angle shot of the entire scenic scene, the actual landscape as we see it through our eyes, and then composite the two together to be able to get the exact image that we saw, right? So the bottom line here is really, it's not about necessarily always creating something that doesn't exist. Maybe it's just simply creating something that does exist in your mind's eye or what you see, but just cannot be captured. So you really just want to learn your tools, just be proficient at the tools, and simply create. It doesn't matter what the results are or who looks at it. As long as you're creating something for yourself, just keep creating and don't put this label on it. There's too many people out there that say, oh no, you can't manipulate a photo, or once you manipulate a photo, you're no longer a photographer, you're an image manipulator, or you're an artist, and that's it. I don't go by any of that stuff. The bottom line is create, have fun, and enjoy yourself with photography. We have the tools, guys. Go ahead and use them to their fullest. Sorry, guys, we need to get out of here. I know it's been probably about 30 minutes and probably running long. And even though I'm running solo, I can talk probably forever and do an hour show, but we don't want to do that. So if you want to find Trevor, you can find him on Twitter, and that's at Trevor Current. If you want to find me, you can also do it through Twitter, and that's at Joseph Christina, and that is Christina without an H. Sorry, guys. If you want to get the show notes from this episode, you can visit digitalphotographycafe.com/161. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/dphotocafe. And we will see you next week.
You've been watching the Digital Photography Cafe Show with Trevor Current and Joseph Christina. Be sure to subscribe to the show for free in iTunes or through RSS. You can also listen on Stitcher and TuneIn Radio and watch in HD on TiVo. Visit digitalphotographycafe.com for show notes and to connect with your hosts.